Hello, people. So today I want to speak about something that I've been wanting to speak about since years. So it's about Jordan Peterson and the Jordan Peterson problem. So if you are wondering what am I talking about, so it's the fact, so when Jordan Peterson throw these people say it's word salads, or when he constantly say, what do you mean by I? What do you mean by you? What do you mean by God? And usually there are two types of people who would look at that. You would have two camps, right? So you'd have people who would say he's a very deep intellectual, that he is being, that it's hard to understand him, that it's hard to fathom what he's trying to do because he's really deep like that. And then you got the second camp of people who are saying, oh, he's just a pseudo intellectual, he runs away from the question, yada yada, right? So I figured it out. I figured it out since a long time because I have benefited from what he says, and at the same time realize where could he not go forward, right? And so just before I do start, I want to give you an example of what am I talking about here, right? So let's watch this clip.
Well, the question, did that happen, begs the question, what do you mean by happen? Because when you are dealing with fundamental realities and you pose a question, you have to understand that the reality of the concepts of your question, when you're digging that deep, are just as questionable about as what you're questioning. So people say to me, what do you believe in God? And I think, okay, there's a couple of mysteries in that question. What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe? And what do you mean God? And you say, as the questioner, well, we already know what all those things mean, except belief in God. And I think, no, if we're going to get down to the fundamental brass tacks, we don't really know what any of them.
So this is what I'm talking about here. So the fact that when you ask him questions about certain topics, he does that. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? And so many people say like, we obviously know what do these things mean. You don't apply the same thing when you're if you go to the grocery store and you ask how much does these tomatoes cost? Nobody is going to ask you, what do you mean by tomatoes? Obviously, we're speaking about tomatoes. So why does he do that to certain words, certain concepts, right? So I have notes here because I can't remember everything out of the top of my head. So here is the thing, right? So Jordan Peterson is from a psychology background, right? And he is nowhere near being a religious expert. It traditionally, spirituality, God, and beliefs have been things that are at the core of the ineffable, meaning things that you cannot say. So it's sort of like, you see, if you try to explain what color means to a person who is born blind, somebody who has never seen color, right? And there are videos online on YouTube. There is a blind person who's been born blind, and he explains how does he feel like when people try to explain color to him. And the answer to that it goes nowhere. He cannot fathom what color is. Now, every person every person have a very individual awareness, consciousness, qualia. Qualia are the things that you hear, the things that you see, things that in a way that you see all of what you see, you taste all of what you taste, you smell all what you smell, but you cannot confirm that everybody is smelling the same stuff. You cannot confirm that my red is your red. Maybe that you are seeing some totally different from the red that I am seeing, but we both call it red. There's no way to verify that. So on the same part of that, right? So you got God, beliefs, religion, stuff like that. This is the issue with that. So these things are so individual and so like it's limited to the person who's talking to them that there is almost no way to verify what the other person, like, if when you say God, is it the same that when the other person says God? And so this is why that religion and theology had its own people. So there are people who spend their whole life trying to put the spiritual into words, and this is a very, very hard task. You see, so he comes from a psychology background, so he is not a theology expert. He's not a religion expert. He's not a prophet. He's none of these things, right? He's not a deeply spiritual person to the point that he would be able to, in a good way, put spiritual concepts into words. Um, So Jordan Peterson, he tackles it from the point of view of a psychologist who has not delved previously in the practice of putting spirituality into words. So he keeps swinging between the two paths, right? He tries to define these words with very, very accurate detail, maybe almost infinite, to make sure that everyone is on the same page, which is why he asks all these words mean, explains this view of them in detail. So this is one thing that he sometimes does. So what he was just doing there. So, like, what do these exactly mean? He's asking them in a literal way. He's making sure that Jordan Peterson himself and the other person are on the same page exactly. And this could take literally hours because he wants to pinpoint to the best of his ability, to the best that can be pinpointed. What does these words mean? What does believe? What does you mean? Because when somebody says you or me for for example, what are you talking about? Are you talking about that? So somebody could say when you are breathing and you're aware of your breathing and then you consciously breathe. And if you don't do that, then it just breathes by itself, right? So do you beat your own heart, or does it beat by by itself? If you're not beating your own heart, then who is doing that then? Isn't it you? So you see what I'm saying here? So the concept of who are you is not as clean cut as most people would think. There's all types of you. There's the conscious you, there's the subconscious you, and and it's unclear where does your body start or your unconscious start or ends and the conscious you start or ends. It's these things are not as clear as people think. So that's why he delves into that and he tries to define things in a way. But this is the problem with it, right? It could go almost infinitely. This sort of thing can go for, you can go into detail, more and more and more and more detail. But it's sort of like when you try to divide something in half, and then and then try to divide it in half again, and then again, and then again, and then again. Theoretically, you could go infinite. Even when you split the the atom, you would have smaller components that you can maybe split. Maybe at some point in what the reality it turns into waves or something like that. But with words and with meaning, I mean that could take years just to define words like that, and you might not succeed. Which is what brings me to the second method that he does, or the second path that he takes. So he sort of just gives up, and so when he does that, so he himself does not have the answer, right? So he asked that question in a rhetoric way, and you might have heard him ask that a few times, right? So like, are you really sure? You don't know. We don't know what these things mean. Blah blah blah, right? It's because at some point he sometimes just like, you know what? It's maybe I give up. I give up on defining these things, right? So he's asking the question as in telling the other person that you cannot define these things. Therefore, you know, listen to me, right? So I'm gonna try to tell you what I think about them, but we cannot define them. And so it's sort of things start to fall down, and this is where people start to say it's just a word salad. He is being elusive. He's not being sincere. He's just dodging the questions. And what I notice is that he's not dodging any questions. This is very sincere from him. It's just that he has fallen for the oldest trick in the book, the fact that spirituality and quality are ineffable. and he's trying to understand spirituality in a material way, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it's unexplainable, right? Like the fact that you're seeing color, is, if you're seeing red, this is pure magic. There is no actual materialistic explanation to why that you see color, why that you are an individual, awareness, looking at the world, having these personal experiences. Like you're looking at ants, you're looking at other animals, right? So this ant, right? From a material point of view, you could explain how the ant exists, but you have no idea if the ant has a soul. Like, does the ant have a feeling? Does it experience this world just like how we are experiencing it? Just like how we are experiencing it now? You cannot really know, because the material understanding of the universe and science does not have a place for this, right? You cannot tell. You cannot tell if this is to the material world. You should not be aware right now. You should not be seeing color. You should not be experiencing any of this now from a materialistic point of view. So going back to Jordan Peterson, he tries to link the material with the immaterial with words, and he's just not that good at it. He's a psychologist. He's not a theologian. He's not a prophet. He's none of these things. So he gets stuck there, you know? And so that's why this thing happens, right? Now, you as the viewer, what do you get from this, right? So what do we get from this, right? So I personally have learned a lot from this. I have learned that it's basically these things, like to know how elusive these words are. So to be able to understand that spirituality is something that cannot be defined by words, kind of give you a sort of path, give you just a right nudge into the correct way to understand your own spirituality, and not and try to not use words for it, right? Because words are, they're always gonna miss the point. Your spirituality cannot be defined by words. So this is something that you can learn from him, which you can sort of like learn from him by seeing his mistakes. Is he keeps trying to define spirituality into words, and he keeps failing, basically. You know, in his world, he is in the process. He's into this infinite process of trying to better himself and to understand this more. Like, he keeps digging into this path of trying to, explain spirituality into language, and to him, he's so close, and he tries to do it more and more and more, but it's sort of an infinite thing. He's going nowhere. So what you should understand from him is that maybe you shouldn't take this path with him. You have learned something, but don't try to infinitely define the spiritual, the immaterial with words. This is just not gonna work. And if you do that, then you will look just like him. You will look like you're doing word salads. You will look like you're just being insane. Like, just like how he sounds like that now. So yeah, he's neither a saint and he's neither a devil. He's not somebody who's trying to scam you, and he's not somebody who's like the biggest genius ever. He's a pretty smart person, and he has a lot of things that we can benefit from. But he's not as deep as some people put him out to be, that you could never understand him. It's really not that. It's just that he's doing his best, and this way he got to, and he's getting old, and when you're old, it's harder for you to learn new things. This is just a fact of the brain. As you age, it is harder for you to learn new things. So take him for what he is, no more and no less. And so, with my intense stuttering here, I was trying not to stutter, but I stuttered a lot during this. But yeah, so this is the solution for the Jordan Peterson problem. In case somebody asks you, in case this question pops into your head, why does he do that? What does he exactly mean? What is he trying to get to? I just explained it. If you have any questions, if you have anything that you want to say about this, leave a comment. If you're not as much interested, I guess it's alright. but this is for people who are interested in understanding Jordan Peterson and why was he like that. And I personally have learned a lot from him. He's a very appreciated figure, although at the moment I do not like him so much for his comments with the war criminal. If you know what I'm talking about, he had an interview with a war criminal and he praised him and he took his side. And this is to me, I cannot accept that. So I do not like him anymore. He might be a beneficial to him, a beneficial human being to society at some point, but right now I don't want to even associate with him. I don't like him. I don't want to be with him. There's nothing for me to learn from such a guy anymore. But yeah, so have a peaceful moment and don't budge.